right, welcome back to Tennessee This Week, everyone. Our conversation continuing with Craig Griffith, Courtney Piper, and George Korda, and we are digging into the outcome of Tuesday's 2018 midterms, focusing now on a couple of races a little bit closer to home, everyone. Voters picking former Knox County Mayor Tim Burchett as their next congressman for District 2. Burchett winning with 66% to 33% for Democrat Renee Hoyos. Good Morning Tennessee anchor Tirsa Smith asked Congressman-elect Burchett if he would bring anything different to the office compared to long-serving Congressman Jimmy Duncan.
Sure. If I tried to be Congressman Duncan, I'd be a failure, just like Glenn Jacobs. If he tried to be me as county mayor, he'd be a failure. You got to do your own thing, and the people respond to that. And I think that's why, at least the voters kind of dig me. Obviously, the numbers show that. So, we're going to continue doing what we do.
Well, it was at
it was
at 6:30 in the morning.
He says he's taking that Carhartt to Congress, by the way. We were just talking about his jacket there.
Well, that's his dress Carhartt. He'll probably leave his casual Carhartt here at the house.
Yeah, he probably has several of them. All right, let's talk about what does Tim Burchett need to do when he gets into Congress?
Well, he's got to learn the ways. He's a freshman legislature. He's going to have to learn how to get on the committees that he wants to be on. He's going to have to learn how to get things done. The previous administration, Congressman Duncan's, his staff, they knew people in each department at the federal level. So if you had a Social Security problem, they knew who to call. If you had a problem with a passport, they knew the people in the State Department. So he's going to have to develop that institutional knowledge to do the constituent service that he wants to do. And then he's going to have to work on doing some of the other things he talked about, Veterans Affairs, and of course being fiscally conservative, which is totally out the window in Washington. I mean, they're just busting the budget, the debt, and everything now, and it's going to be very difficult for him to live in that environment after being a mayor where he had to balance the budget every year.
I think a lot of people, Courtney, are wondering, will Burchett have to change his kind of country folksy swagger that he has going on when he goes to Washington?
Absolutely not, and he shouldn't. That is Tim Burchett. That's why the people elected him. And
as he put it, they dig him.
They dig him. That's why the people in East Tennessee dig him. But he is actually a very incredible and an amazing legislator. When he was in the state Senate, he was a very remarkable and effective elected official for us, as he was when he was county mayor also. So both in that executive branch and then in the legislative branch. So if people are going to discount him because he's wearing his Carhartt and speaks fluent East Tennessee, they're in for a surprise.
George?
Well, he's going to be a freshman member of the minority party. So here's where he will concentrate, I'm confident, and that's on constituent stuff 24/7. Because that's where a member of Congress makes or breaks himself or herself, is what are they doing for folks back in the district? Because he's not going to get huge major bills passed, and he's not gonna, he might get some photo ops at the White House, and he might get some visits to various places, but where he solidifies his future in Congress is by coming back home and schmoozing the heck out of this district. People will love that.
Yes, they will. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Another headline from election night. Gloria Johnson winning back what was previously her state house seat, defeating incumbent Eddie Smith and independent Zachary Houck. The race not nearly as close as it has been in past years, with Johnson this time taking 55% of the vote. Now, Johnson says that health care is critical, saying that the state must expand Medicaid. While recognizing her party is in the minority, she says that on this issue, the people of Tennessee are on her side.
Overwhelmingly, the people of Tennessee support it. And so what I think you're going to hear, what I bring with me, this is not about what I want. I bring their voices. It's going to be their voices heard at the legislature.
George, what made the difference for Gloria Johnson this time around?
Well, I'm wondering if the district didn't actually reveal itself for what it is. Because Eddie Smith was not a bad legislator. He got a lot of high marks from a lot of people for the work that he was doing in Nashville. But I'm wondering if the character of that district, this time, people were motivated, and that the numbers were what the numbers were. And we talked in the actual outcome. We talked about Smith's effort at the end there to kind of tag on to Madeline Rogero, which was it wasn't going to make Democrats like him, and it was going to make some Republicans dislike him, but it was an act of desperation. And I think that it's a little like Black Wednesday. The primary vote immediately after Black Wednesday, it was this huge outpouring, and this is a sign of what it's going to be like, and then it went right back to normal. We'll see in the future whether this was an aberration or if this is now the district.
Courtney, what do you think? Well, what made the difference?
Gloria has always been a very effective and organized campaigner, so you've got that particular skill set of hers, and then you have what I think was a lot of voter interest in that district for her race in particular, and then also looking at the federal seats. So I think she was able to seize that enthusiasm, which was clearly more apparent now than it was 2 years ago, and bring in a victory. And that was a shellacking. You know, this race has always been very close, 120, 150 votes, and this was a 10 percentage point shellacking.
Voters
so big shift in that district.
Yeah, spoke loud and clear. Real quickly, Craig, how does Johnson make herself effective in Nashville? She's going to be the minority party there in our state capital. How does she become effective?
Well, she says that the overwhelming majority of Tennesseans are favoring a Medicaid expansion. Unfortunately for her, the overwhelming majority of Tennesseans aren't voting for candidates that have that same point of view. So if she's going to continue down that path of yelling out and calling for a Medicaid expansion, it's going to fall on deaf ears. And so I think that it's incumbent on people who are going to support that type of activity need to come up with a different plan to help people who need health care in this state. They need to come up with different bills that perhaps would expand services at county health departments or something like that, because Medicaid expansion is not going to pass in this super Republican majority in the House and the Senate.
All right. Still to come, everyone. Democrats taking the House. Republicans keep the Senate and expand some of their numbers. We are looking at the national takeaways from the midterms and what it means going forward. Stay with us. You're watching Tennessee This Week on WATE 6 on your side.